Girl, wash your face. Stop believing the lies about who you are so you can become who you were meant to be, by Rachel Hollis. Introduction. Imagine a young woman, barely 19 years old, standing in her tiny, cheap Hollywood apartment. A year before, she had been so sure of everything. She'd met a man, older, worldly, handsome, and in the way that only the very young can, she had decided, with absolute certainty, that he was the one. This was it. Her life was about to begin. But a year is a long time. A year of being treated like an afterthought. A year of taking whatever scraps of attention he threw her way and being grateful for them. A year of making herself smaller, quieter, less needy, all in the desperate hope that he would finally see her, really see her. And then, just before Thanksgiving, he ended it. He wanted a clean break, he said. They'd always be friends, he said. She begged him not to leave. But he left anyway. The next night, after a miserable holiday, she stood in that same apartment, listening to a voicemail he'd left, checking to see if she was okay. And in that moment, something shifted. A year of pain and insecurity and self-doubt crystallized into a single, powerful moment of clarity. She saw the entire relationship laid out before her, not as the love story she'd imagined, but as the painful lesson it truly was. She called him back. And with a calmness that surprised even her, she said, "I am done with this. I am done with you. Don't ever call me again." She told him she deserved better. And for the first time in a year, she believed it. She hung up, turned off her phone, and for the first time in months, she slept peacefully. Now, in a perfect movie, this is where our story would end. The heroine finds her strength and walks off into the sunset. But life is rarely so simple. Because the next morning, she was woken up by a frantic banging on her front door. And on the other side was that same man, begging her for one more chance. That man is now her husband of more than a decade, the father of her 4 children. This story isn't just a dramatic tale of young love. It's the very heart of one of the most transformative books of the last decade, Girl, Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. This book has sold millions of copies and launched a global movement, not because it offers magic formulas or easy fixes, but because it's built on one profound and life-altering truth, a truth that young woman discovered in her Hollywood apartment all those years ago. By the end of our time together today, you will understand this truth. You will see the invisible lies that have been holding you back, and you will be armed with the one secret that allows you to take control of your own life and your own happiness, starting right now. Book summary. Let's be honest. We all have 2 lives. The life we present to the world, and the one we live when nobody's watching. On social media, Rachel Hollis's life looked perfect. She was a successful entrepreneur, running a lifestyle media company with beautiful pictures of styled cupcakes and glamorous photos from the Oscars. People would write to her, saying how perfect her world must be, how she seemed to have it all together. And all she could think was, "I just peed my pants on a trampoline trying to impress my 3-year-old." That's not a joke. That really happened. And this is the central idea that Rachel Hollis built her entire message on: the gap between the perception of perfection and the messy, complicated, and often embarrassing reality of life. She realized that so many of us, especially women, are drowning in the belief that we're the only ones falling short. We look at the curated highlight reels of others and feel like we're failing because our behind-the-scenes chaos doesn't match up. But Hollis came to deliver a powerful message, one that she had to learn through years of struggle. She says it this way: you, and only you, are ultimately responsible for who you become and how happy you are. That sounds simple, almost like a Pinterest. But it's a truth we can't fully grasp until we first understand the lies that stand in its way. She argues that for our entire lives, we've been telling ourselves stories. Lies. Lies that we're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough. Lies that someone else, a partner, a job, a certain number on the scale, will finally make us happy. These lies, she says, have been playing so loudly in our ears for so long that they've become white noise. We don't even hear them anymore. But they are dictating our choices, limiting our potential, and stealing our joy. The journey to a better life, the one you were meant to live, begins with identifying and systematically destroying every single one of those lies. One of the most common and destructive lies is the one that says, "Something else will make me happy." When Hollis was a teenager, her home life was chaotic and traumatic. Her older brother, her protector and best friend, committed suicide when she was just 14 years old. The tragedy shattered her already fragile family. Her driving thought became, "Someday I'll get out of here, and then I'll be happy." So, at 17, she graduated high school early and moved to Los Angeles, believing that a change of scenery would change her life. And for a while, it felt like it did. But as time went on, she learned one of the most vital lessons of her life: moving is just geography. It doesn't change who you are, it only changes the view outside your window. You can be in the most beautiful place on earth and still be miserable if you haven't decided to be happy. Happiness isn't a destination you arrive at, it's a choice you make every single day, regardless of your circumstances. This brings us to another insidious lie, perhaps the one that sabotages more dreams than any other: "I'll start tomorrow." We've all been there. We declare that from now on, we're going to wake up early, go to the gym, eat healthy, write that book. And then, we don't. We fold faster than a card table after game night. Hollis tells a story about working out late at night after a long dinner with friends. Her friend texted her, genuinely perplexed, asking why she didn't just postpone it until the next day. Hollis's reply was simple and profound: "Because I made a promise to myself and I don't break those, not ever." Her friend's response? I'm the first person I break a promise to." Think about that. We fight so hard to keep our word to our boss, our friends, our family. But we cancel on ourselves without a second thought. Imagine you had a friend who constantly flaked on you. Who made plans and then bailed because a TV show was too good to turn off. Would you trust that friend? Would you rely on them? Of course not. Well, your subconscious mind feels the same way about you. When you constantly break the promises you make to yourself, you teach yourself that you cannot be trusted. You train yourself to give up. So when things get hard, when you face a setback, your instinct, your highest level of training, is to quit. So how do you change this? How do you become someone who keeps their word to themselves? Hollis says you start small. For her, it all began with Diet Coke. She was obsessed, drinking several a day. She knew it was unhealthy, so she decided to give it up for just 30 days. It sounds trivial, but she had a lifetime of quitting things behind her. This time, she asked herself one question: what if, just this once, I really saw it through? And she did. The first week was hell. But she kept her promise. And by the end of the month, she didn't even crave it anymore. That one small victory created a new pattern. It taught her subconscious a new lesson: when she set a goal, she achieved it. That small success built the foundation for bigger ones, like running a half marathon and writing her first book. If you want to achieve your goals, you have to stop just talking about them and start building a history of keeping your promises to yourself, no matter how small. But what if the lie isn't about tomorrow? What if it's about today? What if the lie is the one that whispers, "I'm not good enough"? This lie is a subtle poison. For Hollis, it manifested as workaholism. She loved her job. It was a place where she excelled, where she felt competent and proud. Home, on the other hand, was messy. It was toddler tantrums, teenage attitudes, and feeling like she was constantly failing as a mom. So, she got in the habit of working, and working some more. It was a choice between crushing it at the office or barely hanging on at home. The choice seemed easy. But it was more than that. It was rooted in a childhood where she learned that she only received praise and attention when she achieved something. Love, in her young mind, had to be earned. This belief followed her into adulthood, creating a relentless need to prove her worth through constant productivity. She couldn't sit still. The moment she accomplished one goal, she was already thinking, okay, what's next? She had no idea this was a problem. She had no idea her work was grievously affecting her health. Until her body forced her to listen. At 19, during that tumultuous first year of her relationship with Dave, the stress became so intense that she developed Bell's palsy. Half of her face was paralyzed. She couldn't close her eye, her speech was slurred, and she had to wear an eye patch. A few years later, while on a dream vacation in Europe, it happened again. The photo she'd always dreamed of, her in front of the Eiffel Tower, became a painful reminder of her illness. The doctors told her both times it was caused by extreme stress. She was working 60-hour weeks and not taking care of herself. Her body was literally shutting down to get the rest it needed. Years later, the stress manifested as vertigo. The room would sway. She felt constantly dizzy and nauseous. After seeing countless doctors, a homeopathic practitioner finally gave her the diagnosis that changed her life. He looked at her and said her vertigo was a physical response to an emotional problem. His prescription? Go home and do nothing. The idea made her skin crawl. For someone who believed her worth was tied to her productivity, doing nothing felt like dying. But she forced herself. She went home, sat on the couch, and discovered that the world did not, in fact, implode without her going 100 miles an hour. She learned to rest. She learned to find joy in simple things. She went to therapy and finally grasped the divine knowledge that she was loved, worthy, and enough, just as she was. You cannot take care of anyone else until you first take care of yourself. You have to put yourself on your own priority list. This journey of self-worth also requires confronting another dangerous lie. I need to make myself smaller. Hollis shares how her father, a man she craved love from, would often call her little girl not as an endearment, but as an expletive. Little girl, you have no clue what you're talking about. This taught her an impossible lesson: to be successful enough to earn his praise, but small enough not to be a nuisance. This paradox followed her for years. She built a massive media company but would dismiss it at parties as just a lifestyle blog. She was afraid to own her ambition, to speak about her success, for fear it would make others uncomfortable. She realized she wasn't alone. She saw countless entrepreneurial women describing their businesses as hobbies or side gigs, even when they were making hundreds of thousands of dollars. They were all making themselves smaller to make others feel more comfortable. Hollis asks a powerful question. Do you really think you were made to deny your true self because it might be off-putting to others? You were not made to be small. Embracing your ambition, your dreams, and your power is not boastful. It's living out the life you were designed for. Of course, the path to our dreams is never a straight line. It's filled with roadblocks and rejection. And that's where we run into the lie that stops so many in their tracks. No is the final answer. Hollis says she is an expert in rejection. But more importantly, she's an expert in refusing to let rejection be the end of the story. She believes that when it comes to your dreams, no is not an answer. It's a detour. It's a sign to reevaluate, to find another way. If you can't get through the front door, try the side window. If the window is locked, slide down the chimney. No simply means you need to change your course. She tells the story of writing her first novel. A literary agent approached her, loved her idea, and told her, "I can sell this all day long." Hollis was ecstatic. She wrote like a mad woman, convinced this was her big break. She finished the book, and the agent sent it out to every major publisher in New York. The responses were encouraging, but they all had the same note. The editor on the first call said, "Our concern is that it's too sweet." They wanted her to add steam, sex. This was at the height of the 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon, and every publisher was chasing that trend. But it wasn't the story she wanted to tell. Her heroine was innocent and naive, and that's what made her special. So, politely, she declined. The publisher's response was blunt: "Nobody will buy it as is." One by one, every single publisher turned it down. She locked herself in the bathroom and sobbed. But after the tears, she got up, poured a glass of wine, sat down at her laptop, and Googled, "How do you self-publish a book?" She self-published that book, the one nobody wanted. To date, that single book has sold over 100,000 copies and launched her career as an author. The lesson is powerful. Nobody gets to tell you how big your dreams can be. They can talk all they want, but you get to decide if you're going to listen. These lies don't just affect our careers, they deeply impact our relationships. One of the most heartbreaking lies is the one that says, "Loving him is enough for me." This is the lie that leads us to accept treatment we don't deserve, to silence our own needs in the hope of being loved. This is the lie Hollis lived during that first painful year with the man who would become her husband, Dave. She was so in love, so desperate for the relationship to work, that she justified everything. When he wouldn't acknowledge her during the day but called her late at night, she went. When his friends were rude to her and he said nothing, she made excuses. She took whatever scraps he gave her and was thrilled to receive them. She became a version of herself she didn't recognize, all in the pursuit of his love. It took hitting rock bottom, the breakup, the pain, the moment of clarity, for her to realize that she had to be willing to walk away. She had to value herself more than she valued the relationship. It was only when she found the strength to say "I'm done" that he realized what he was about to lose. Her story had a fairy tale ending, but she is quick to point out that this is not typical. The real lesson isn't that he will come back. The real lesson is that you will be okay if he doesn't. As long as you allow someone to treat you badly, they will. If you're not able to value yourself, no one else will either. This journey of self-love and self-respect extends to every part of our lives, including our role as mothers. So many women are haunted by the lie, "I'm not a good mom." Hollis shares a story about her 7-year-old son telling her she needed to get one of those monogram necklaces with her kid's initials on it. Why? So you can finally be like all the other moms. Those words crushed her. Because she was already glaringly aware of how different she was. She was the working mom in high heels and a blazer at school events, surrounded by moms in yoga pants. She was constantly juggling, constantly feeling like she was dropping the ball, constantly comparing herself to some mythical other mom who grew her own organic cotton to sew her son's t-shirt for craft day. She finally decided, "I'm over it." She realized that trying to be a perfect mom is a myth. But being a pretty great mom, most of the time, is actually possible. There is no one right way to be a mother. Your kids don't need a perfect mom, they need a happy one. They need a mom who gives herself grace, who models self-care, and who isn't constantly beating herself up for not being like everyone else. The best way to care for your children is to first care for yourself. Perhaps the most difficult lies to overcome are the ones rooted in deep trauma, the ones that tell us, "I will never get past this." Hollis speaks with raw courage about finding her brother's body after his suicide. She doesn't shy away from the horrific images seared into her brain, the years of nightmares, the crippling fear and guilt that followed. For years, she didn't think she could ever wade through it. All she could see was blood and fear and loss. But she is still here. She explains that she survived by flipping the narrative in her mind. She refused to let the trauma have the last word. Instead of letting the hard time make her weak, she willed it to make her strong. When she was in her 51st hour of labor, exhausted and weak, her internal monologue was, "You were forged in a fire worse than this. You've stood with death, and you are certainly strong enough to help bring this life into being." She makes a profound point. If you're going to blame your hard times for everything that's wrong in your life, you also have to blame them for the good stuff too. The resilience, the strength, the empathy, all of it was forged in that fire. You cannot ignore your pain, but you can find a way to embrace the good that came out of it. Your trauma does not have to define your life. All of these lies, about our worth, our dreams, our relationships, our past, ultimately lead us to one final, empowering truth. It's the truth Hollis discovered during her first half marathon. At mile 11, struggling and exhausted, she was listening to Bonnie Tyler's "I Need a Hero" on her iPod. And as she sang along, she had the biggest epiphany of her adult life. She didn't need a hero. In that moment, pushing her body past limits she never thought possible, she realized, "I am my own hero." Nobody forced her to train. Nobody got the blisters for her. Nobody paid the entrance fee. That was all her. And the achievements in your life, big and small, that have made you who you are, those are all you. This is the ultimate message of the book. You have the power to change your life. God, your partner, your friends, none of them can do it for you. You have to stop waiting for someone else to fix it. Stop hiding, stop being afraid, stop making excuses. The final command is simple, yet revolutionary. It's a call to action for anyone who has ever felt stuck, unworthy, or lost. It's the moment you decide to rise up from where you've been, scrub away the tears and the pain of yesterday, and start again. It's the moment you look in the mirror and say, "Girl, wash your face." Commentary. What makes "Girl, Wash Your Face" such a phenomenon is not that it presents ideas we've never heard before. The power is in its brutal, disarming honesty. Rachel Hollis doesn't speak from a pedestal of perfection. She speaks from the messy, chaotic, and relatable trenches of real life. She pees her pants, she has hairy toes, she fights with her husband, and she feels like a failure as a mom. And in sharing that vulnerability, she gives us all permission to be imperfect too. The most powerful lesson, the one that underpins every story and every chapter, is the profound call to personal responsibility. In a world that often encourages us to see ourselves as victims of our circumstances, Hollis's message is a bracing and empowering alternative. She argues that while we cannot control what happens to us, we are always in control of how we respond. Our past trauma, our childhood, our setbacks, they are part of our story, but they do not have to be our excuse. We can choose to be defined by our pain, or we can choose to be strengthened by it. This isn't about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps through sheer willpower alone. It's about a fundamental shift in perception. It's about recognizing the narratives, the lies, that we've accepted as truth and making the conscious choice to write a new story. So, how can you begin to apply this in your own life, right now? First, identify one lie. Just one. Pick one of the lies we've talked about today that resonates with you. Is it "I'll start tomorrow"? Is it "I'm not good enough"? Write it down. Acknowledging the lie is the first step in taking away its power. Second, make one promise to yourself and keep it. Start ridiculously small, just like Hollis did with the Diet Coke. Maybe it's drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning. Maybe it's walking for 10 minutes after dinner. Fulfill that promise for 1 week. The goal isn't the action itself. The goal is to build a new track record of self-trust. And third, be your own hero in one small way. Do something that scares you a little. Sign up for that class. Make that phone call you've been avoiding. Finish that project you abandoned. Prove to yourself, through action, that you are more capable than you believe. This book is a mirror. It forces us to look at the ways we hold ourselves back, the excuses we make, and the potential we're letting slip away. The journey it outlines is not easy, but it is essential. It is the journey from believing the lies about who you are to finally, courageously, becoming who you were meant to be. That was a deep dive into the core ideas of Girl, Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. We've explored the highlights today, the powerful stories and the life-changing principles. But I'll be honest with you, a summary can only ever be a map. The real treasure is found when you make the journey yourself. The true magic happens in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with you in a way you didn't expect. This podcast is here to help you decide if this book deserves your time. If anything we've talked about today has struck a chord, if you felt a spark of recognition in these stories, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just an act of learning, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see yourself and the life you're capable of living. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you a new perspective, please do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.